Elizabeth McMeans, welcome to the LiberatED podcast.
Well, thank you, Carrie. I'm honored to be on today.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you here. I was able to meet you in person when I was visiting the Wichita area and see your learning pod, your Prenda pod up close, and wanted to have you on the podcast to kind of share your story with my listeners of how you came from someone who has a background and degree in human resources and organizational development to then becoming an educator and an entrepreneur, and seeing how that transition occurred. And I know that you were growing your family, building your family, and ended up shifting out of sort of a corporate recruiting role to being a realtor. And you and your husband own a real estate development company in Kansas, which gave you some flexibility to sort of think about other things and to spend a lot of time raising your young son. And it was really at the time where you were thinking about school enrollment choices for him as he was heading into sort of kindergarten and beginning his K-12 path, that you decided to look into some other options. Maybe you could share that story with us.
Sure, absolutely. He is a summer baby. He was born August the 5th. And for anyone that lives in Kansas, that is just right before the cutoff time to start school. So as I was looking at school, I'm like, wow, he's ready to go, but he's still wiggly. He was just 4 and now he's 5. And so I had a little hesitation about sending him to a school because I know I just have had some friends talk about their wiggly children and the teacher suggesting that they hold them back a year, and I just wasn't sure what to do. So I was like, okay, well, let me see what else is available. I Prior to children, I wasn't a homeschool advocate. I mean, I guess it just wasn't a part of my world, so I didn't even have to consider it. But as a mom, I'm like, well, is homeschooling an option? And to me, I liked the structure and the rigor of the classroom. But homeschooling, trying to do it all on my own, I was just like, I don't think I'm prepared for that. Because, like you said, I have a degree in management and leadership and not in education. And so I didn't feel prepared to put together the curriculum and all of that. And so I said, okay, what else is available? And that's when I found a hybrid school here. And what they provided was learning at home. They provided in-class opportunities, and then they provided the certified teacher, to get together with the students. And that worked out very well because, like I said, intellectually he was ready. He was still able to get up and run around the house as he needed to. He wasn't confined to a seat for 6 to 7 hours a day. And then we also had a teacher overseeing the education portion. So I wasn't solely in charge of it. I was a participant and called a learning coach. And that worked out great, especially when we hit the pandemic and all the schools stopped. We were able to continue going. And so that was wonderful.
Right.
But what I realized is that he just was not getting enough social interaction.
Right. And so I want to get into kind of how COVID shifted things up for you and how you ultimately ended up running your own Prenda learning pod over the past couple of years. But I do want to back up for a minute because I think it's really interesting that you bring up your son's kindergarten experience and turning 5 in August before kindergarten enrollment. And it's really fascinating because I've written about this before. A Harvard University study came out in the fall of 2018 where they looked at kindergarten enrollment in states across the country. And they found that in states that had a September 1st kindergarten cutoff date, that for children who were born in August and therefore were newly minted 5-year-olds, they were more than 30%, they were 30% more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than their same age peers who were born in September and therefore were, basically a year older, almost a year older. And of course, moms are sitting here listening and saying, of course, there's a huge difference between a newly minted 5-year-old and a child who's about to turn 6. There's the tremendous growth that happens in early childhood, particularly at that age level. And a lot of 5-year-olds just aren't able to sit down and pay attention and follow directions. And so it's no surprise that we would see this rise in sort of diagnosis of ADHD. And a lot of those students would then get medicated for that diagnosis. And so interesting that you kind of had that same recognition that, let's look at something else. Let's not put him in a kindergarten where we may be setting him up for something that won't work well for him in terms of his whole being, right? Like you said, intellectually he was ready, but emotionally, developmentally, he may not have been, just in kind of being able to comply with these classroom requirements that have really become, I think, even more standardized in recent years, sort of these expectations around what a 5-year-old is expected to do now than maybe what 5-year-olds were expected to do even a generation ago. So that was your foray into what else is available and discovering this hybrid homeschooling model that really sounds like it gave you that access to the certified teacher, but also time at home and time for him to play and develop on his own schedule. So then now that brings us up to kind of where you left off of COVID hit. You were starting to think, gee, we wanted more social interaction for him, something a little more with more students. And then what happened?
So I began to think, I was like, okay, I'm back in the same situation. Do we go to a traditional school or what do we do? And I really like the flexibility provided with the hybrid program. And I'm a really big growth mindset person. That's something that I want to instill in him. That's something that I believe in. And I kind of put the papers away for a little while and had pulled them out. I think it was like maybe on a Friday. And on Sunday, I was getting online looking for something. And all of a sudden, I think it was in Facebook, in my newsbook feed, this model for Prenda popped up. And it's like growth mindset. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? How did I miss this if this is in Kansas? And so I just started looking into the options. And I really thought at that point, it was what I was looking for. It would provide the access to be able to get together with students, but still promote the things that are important to me: growth mindset, individuality, working together, collaboration, some of the things that you don't really see all or every day in the regular school system. And so I just jumped in head first. I was like, well, okay, let's see how we can make this work. And because it was brand new, there were no guides. However, because I had been a learning coach at the other school, it prepared me for the role as a guide. And so I began the guide training.
It's just so amazing. So Prenda, for listeners who may not know, was one of the first kind of national microschool networks, started in Arizona in 2018. And of course, became even more of a household name over the past couple of years through the education disruption caused by COVID. And so Prenda really was kind of going down this path of bringing back the one-room schoolhouse, this sort of mixed age, small co-learning communities with a much more personalized curriculum that was tailored to each individual child, but also, structured and had, expectations for performance and for mastery, along with a lot of kind of project-based learning. So it really has been able to bring microschools to so many more people. And then you discovered this Prenda model and realized that this could be exactly what you were looking for. And at the time, there was this public-private partnership happening with Kansas and the Kansas public schools. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that relationship.
So Prenda is partnered with a small school district here in Kansas. And so the model is, I am a guide, I oversee the day-to-day learning, but there is still a certified teacher who oversees all of the testing. They oversee the academic portion that I may not necessarily be certified to take care of. They take care of that for us. And so in my opinion, it's still the best of both worlds to me, as was the hybrid model that I used before, because I am still able to go in and influence in a way that I believe is positive for the students, while yet still maintaining a criteria that I don't have to select to make sure that, they're meeting the targets that they should, the developmental targets that they should. And so I absolutely love that concept.
Yeah. And the public-private partnership with the Kansas Public School District also enabled more students to attend tuition free, giving them access to this kind of model that they otherwise wouldn't have had. Isn't that how it works?
That's true. When I talk to parents, they say, "Okay, well, I love the concept, but how much is it?" And I'm like, "Well, it's free." And they're like, "I'm sorry, what?" I said, "Yes, it is free." And so it's really worked well for parents.
That's amazing. And so you started last fall, the fall of 2021. And what did your pod look like? Your son was there, of course, but what else did it look like? And where were you located? What was sort of the fall and spring semesters like for you?
I can say the first year, as with anything, it's a lot of growth and a lot of learning. Prenda was new here, so I was able to connect with the other Prenda guides, and we kind of formed an alliance that we could call each other, good days, bad days, we could call each other and talk about it. My Prenda pod or my micro school is currently located in a recreation center, which works out wonderfully because we have a gym there and so, as we all know, children need to be outside for recess and just outside getting vitamin D. And so, we have the outside portion. And then, when the weather changes, because we live in Kansas and it changes quite frequently, they're able to be inside in the gym and still have access to play and run and jump and exercise and all the wonderful things that they need every day.
So when I visited you at your Prenda Pod, there was a group of students working on their math curriculum and kind of doing those core academics. And then you were getting ready to head on a field trip to Molly and Noah Stevenson's micro school, which is also Prenda affiliated. I've had them on the podcast as well to talk about their Wildflower Community School that focuses on a lot of neurodiverse children in the greater Wichita area, but also, again, Prenda affiliated, where students are able to attend tuition free with this public-private partnership. And great to see that level of collaboration and community. And even in the recreation center where your pod is located are other Prenda micro schools. So tell us a little bit about that community, not just of Prenda pod guides and entrepreneurs, but of the sort of entrepreneurial environment that is emerging in Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, okay. So I've been introduced to a wonderful group of education entrepreneurs in Wichita, and the group is WISE, and we get together and we meet once a month. And in that group, I've found so much community. We're able to share ideas. We're able to plan for growth and exposure to alternative schooling options. And it's just wonderful to be a part, to know that for one, you're not alone, and two, resources. There's so many resources that I've been able to access because of my interaction with this wonderful group of people. And so I know you've had Molly and Noah on, and I hope you have many more because there's so much energy, there's so much diversity, there's so many things that they can add that I don't even think all of Wichita is aware is available here.
Yeah, I think that's what's amazing is the diversity of the different education options, very different educational philosophies, different educational approaches, but the group really coming together under, as you say, this WISE group that was kind of parent driven, entrepreneur driven, just started earlier this year in the spring of 2022, and it stands for Wichita Innovative Schools and Educators, WISE. And it really does, I think, as you say, provide that sense of community and collaboration. Many of the WISE members are also VELA grantees. They have received micro grants from the VELA Education Fund that looks to help catalyze education entrepreneurship, especially these kind of non-traditional learning models. But it's great to see the group kind of coalescing around a commitment to expanding education options for more families, and must be nice for you where you have that Prenda connection. So you've been able to have that kind of national network of support and resources, as well as locally you have those Prenda guides like Molly and Noah and others, but you also have that kind of larger, more diverse kind of Wichita educators and innovators to tap into. And so, I mean, I guess that gets to some more of like, what are your thoughts as your son gets older? You said right now he's how old?
He's 8.
He's 8. So
Mhm.
as you think about his education over the next several years, and you see sort of what is emerging in the Wichita area, what do you see as kind of the future of education locally, as well as maybe trends nationally?
I'm thinking that he may never have to go to a traditional school, and that's a wonderful thing, to have options available because as I talk to more and more parents, um, I'm collaborate with a teacher that has a lot of data, and we're understanding now that COVID did have an impact, but really there were a lot of things brewing under the ground before COVID even hit us nationally that COVID has exposed as far as the education system. And so I see many more parents talking about the things that they want for their children. And one of the things that I want for my son is I want him to be it's the things that Prenda offers. I want him to have a growth mindset. I want him to be able to take responsibility for his education. And one of the things that the students do every time that they come in now is they set their goals for the day. And it's in alignment with the goals that we have set for the year. And so they're so excited every day to see there's this little mountain, to see how they're climbing on their mountain and to really see them take ownership of it. So when I say, hey, it's time for us to, it's conquer time. So let's get on our computers. They understand what that means and they understand how that affects them now and how that affects them in the future. And so that's what I want to see for him is that he has the knowledge and he has been prepared to take ownership of his education because there's many things that I can want for him, but until he wants it for himself, well, then we're just kind of like this. And so I see him just flourishing. Prenda goes up through the 8th grade, but then I see that there are people in our WISE group who offer high school. And so I'm just excited that we don't even have to look to the traditional model if we don't want to, because there's so much diversity and innovation available for schooling and what that looks like now.
Oh, just incredible. It sounds like you're optimistic then for the future. And who knows, by the time your son hits 9th grade and ages out of Prenda, what more will be available? I mean, already there's just been so much growth in your area and so many alternatives sprouting. So, Elizabeth, I think, some of my listeners might be thinking about wanting to be an education entrepreneur. Maybe they're parents or educators who have an itch to start off on their own, but might be somewhat intimidated. And of course, your background, you had been a realtor, so entrepreneurial already. Your husband and you own a development company, so you already kind of had that business savviness. So what would you say to someone who maybe feels slightly more intimidated? Maybe they've been a classroom teacher for the last, say, 20 years, and they don't have that kind of entrepreneurial understanding or understanding of how to run a business. What would you say to them if they want to get started doing something on their own?
I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't mention this, but I do think that even in our WISE group, I'm noticing that there are some teachers who are coming over this way, and so I think even the narrative that teachers have now that is changing of what education looks like for them and how they provide education to students. And so I would encourage them to see what's available because um, even now in 2022, there's so much more available than when I first looked in 2019. And what I'm finding is that one avenue may not work for you, but there's so much, like I said, diversity that there is I believe that there's a place for everyone to fit in. And then I do believe because of the movement, because of the progression, that if you don't exactly find what it is you're looking for, there's enough collaboration, there's enough forward moving energy to assist you in creating what it is that you want to see.
I love that. So even if you're not already an entrepreneur, now there's so many more resources to help you to become an education entrepreneur. It's interesting that you say even over the past couple of years, you've seen more and more resources, more tools and support for emerging education entrepreneurs. So Elizabeth, if my listeners want to learn more about Prenda and about your pod, what is the best way for them to reach you or Prenda?
They can always go online to Prenda.com, and at Prenda.com, they have a map that has all of the guides available. So even if you are not in Kansas and you're interested, check the map because Prenda is growing rapidly. The model is one that parents are can really resonate with, and so parents are becoming guides as the first step. And so check the Prenda map. They have all of our contact information there, and actually, if you aren't able to reach us, you can reach out to Prenda and they will reach out to us for you so that we can connect.
Elizabeth McMeans, thank you again for being on the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you. I have enjoyed my time with you, Carrie. I appreciate it.